Step into the fascinating realm of industrial metals, where steel prices fluctuate and market indicators are the pulse of an ever-evolving industry. Welcome to Cup of Joe, the metal podcast paying homage to our founder, Joseph T. Ryerson. Settle in, savor a cup of Joe, and let the conversation begin.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Cup of Joe. I am Mike Carrazzo, joined as always by Nick Webb. Nick, how are you doing in this fine January, I think it is, even though there's a Christmas tree behind you?
As you said before we started recording, I'm one of those apparently now.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. We got a balmy, 35 degrees outside. We got sun. It is, I think it's almost boat season.
Boat season. Yeah. Taking out the what do you have? The SS Hedge? Is that your boat name? Little bit of different kind of episode. We're going to stray from the commodities update here because we got a very special guest and to talk about from the customer perspective, and we never want to turn that down. So we're very pleased to welcome Alfredo Arroyo. He's the Chief Operations Officer and Senior VP with Waev Inc. Now, Waev is it's not maybe a household name, right? But if you look at if you watch any kind of football game and someone unfortunately gets carried off on a cart, I think that cart is made by one of your brands, right, Alfredo?
That's correct. Taylor Dunn would be the brand.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you give a little introduction. Before that, we're also joined by one of our general managers in our advanced processing division, and we're going to be talking a little bit advanced processing with Alfredo. James Porter. James, how are you?
Yeah, great to be here, guys. You know, Nick has a Christmas tree up. We had 12 inches of snow in Arkansas last week, and there's a little still on the ground. So we're recovering. Schools are back open. The grocery stores are restocked, and I'm excited to talk with Alfredo, Mike, you, and Nick today. Look forward to it.
Such an amateur. 12 inches. That's like Tuesday in Chicago. Well, let's get right into it. Do you mind, Alfredo, giving us a little introduction of yourself and of Waev as a company?
No problem. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Deeply appreciate it. My name is Alfredo Arroyo. I'm the COO and SVP here at Waev. Waev is a manufacturer of low-speed electric vehicles, and unlike the climate zones that you guys endure, we're headquartered in sunny Southern California here in Anaheim, where we manufacture all of our brands. And so we really own three core brands, GEM being one of them. That's street legal people transport, so on-road vehicles that require tag, title, registration, and license, but they'll only go at 25 mile an hour max limit. And then Tiger is our second brand. It's an electric tow tractor that we sell to airport and ground support operators, moving ULD containers for parcel industries, about 60,000 pounds of tow capacity in a vehicle that's full electric. We were the first in the market to launch an electric format of this. And lastly, really our flagship brand, which is Taylor Dunn, which has been around 75 years, making steel body industrial grade burden carriers. So, Mike, as you mentioned, our vehicles, we like to say are anywhere from airports to zoos, right? When a 300-pound lineman gets injured on a football field any given Sunday, right? A little Taylor Dunn truck, all electric, goes and picks the gentleman up. And similarly, our vehicles can be found, setting up and tearing down event spaces from conferences like Coachella, fleet maintenance and operations and manufacturing facilities for tier one and auto OEMs. So really just those are three of our core brands that Waev as a holdings company owns.
Outstanding. Well, thanks for joining us. And the topic we're going to be getting deep into is supply chain management, and that's obviously the relationship you have with Ryerson. Would you mind just bringing us up to speed a little bit about your relationship with Ryerson, which I think predates your time at Waev as well, if I'm not mistaken?
That's correct. So in my early career, we'd always interface with Ryerson just as a steel distributor. I used to work in the cable tray electrical enclosure industry, and eventually in my career, I led the supply chain and operations for an engineer to order light fixture manufacturing facility that was headquartered in the Bay Area, and we bought exclusively Ryerson steel. Right. So every custom grade light fixture that you would see at the University of California in Berkeley, for example, for their really beautiful library, was made in Richmond, California, but took Ryerson steel. If you walk into the W Hotel in Las Vegas or really in any large resort, that beautiful LED glass light fixture is something that we would make. So I have a long-standing history and great working relationship throughout my career with Ryerson.
So what do you think it was, I guess, at the onset that kind of led you to Ryerson in the first place? Was there anything specific that jumped out?
Yeah, absolutely. So familiarity, right? Brand tenure was also very, very helpful. So when I took over the leadership role here for operations at Waev, obviously we had to understand the market strategy. So as I mentioned before, several of our vehicles are all fully steel bodied, and we had sourced steel from, mom and pop steel suppliers to the Ryersons of the world. And as we knew that we needed to grow and scale, that we knew that we had to make a search, right, really for somebody that had the scale, right? Because our ambitions, right, in growth exceed really the footprints of the facility that we have here in Anaheim. And we knew that Ryerson as a partner is somebody that could help us do that.
Yeah, and you're as you kind of alluded to, I mean, as a world-class manufacturer, you're building these world-class supply chains, and really talk a little bit about what you value the most when it comes to your suppliers, and really how Ryerson's fit that in general.
Absolutely, Mike. It's a great question. So for me, the way that I like to look at it, it's just a blended package, right? Between price, value, lead time. Having been working in supply chain for many, many years now, I'm deeply empathetic that, I can't have it all and we can't have it all. And at times, a lot of manufacturers really make the mistake of having things be a race to the bottom on price, which is its own strategy that can be implemented. And I think for us, the premium in partnering with Ryerson is just their expertise in steel price, a high level of engagement, the resources, the partnership, especially with the advanced processing team and the scope of work that they really wanted to do with us, and what I needed in my business. I think the other benefit for us is having a clear vision at the end state. So as with all projects, at times we have hiccups and bumps, and we quickly realized, and it became very, very apparent that, again, the partnership with Ryerson knew that a win for them was also a win for us, right? So there was never any finger pointing or blaming, which is again, more of a traditional model that you would see with a partnership. And so there obviously needs to be the healthy discussions on price, just so it becomes a win-win for everybody. But that's really what I look for when I evaluate really any core partner in my supply chain, right? That even deals from commoditized goods to specialty goods, right?
That makes a lot of sense.
So, Alfredo, you'd mentioned that one of the initiatives internally within Waev was to have rapid growth. Obviously, we love scenarios where we can potentially grow with any of our customers and really partner up. But I'm curious, how was that process? Because oftentimes, as you're growing, there can be growing pains related to supply chains and just getting things positioned in the right way. Can you talk through the process of maybe how Ryerson worked with changing your production or growing your production?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Waev and Taylor Dunn has historically had a very long and large backlog. So when I took over the business, we had quite an enormous backlog, and the challenge was, put it on 4 wheels and ship it. And it became quickly apparent to me as I evaluated the value stream map of my supply chain that the core bottleneck was my vertical integration, right? So we have lasers, brake presses, mills, CNC machines, and just core sheet metal manufacturing and welding that we would do that really far outpaced the demand that I had incoming. And so it became a quick equation that, it's a hindrance for my sales team to go get a partner or a new customer engaged and excited about a new Taylor Dunn vehicle. And you turn around and you say, well, it's going to have to be, X many weeks. And that's just not really appetizing. So the premium for us is really delivering short lead time vehicles for our customers. We firmly believe that, again, Taylor Dunn is the brand leader, right? We are the Kleenex in our category. And as such, I reached out to Ryerson Advance initially to understand where I could obtain additional manufacturing capacity for this content of work. And then I got connected to James very, very quickly, and it became very apparent that there's an overlap in company strategies about what I needed and what Ryerson was really expanding on. And I think this really, really became fruitful, not just for me in the short term, because there's the initial expansion of the capacity that I needed that James and the Ryerson Advanced Processing team really helped fulfill to find supplementary external, right? But just the global presence that I think Ryerson has became very, very tight fit for us. As Waev evaluates its expansion in manufacturing presence, for example, in the East Coast, right, the model is also replicable. Right. So this became very, very attractive to us strategically. And this is something that I was very transparent with James throughout the entire history of our engagement, which made the partnership just so beneficial. And so I think, again, I go back to this kind of win-win that we both had and the investment that Ryerson made, right, in its resource appropriation, and similarly the benefit that we incur. For a long time, the other thing that I'll supplement is Taylor Dunn has long prided itself on being an engineer to order company as well. So we sell a fleet of standard vehicles, right? But whenever a school or an airport wants a custom, ambulance-based unit, right? Or they need a custom machine unit. Somebody wants to put acetylene tanks and they want to put weld equipment on the back of one of our vehicles. We're the company that wants to take that business. We want to say, absolutely, we'll take that in, we'll do it, we'll engineer to order to your specification. And going back to the previous context was because of the bottleneck in my supply chain, I couldn't do both, right? I couldn't service existing business to the scale that my sales team really wanted. And so this allows us to have Ryerson's advanced processing team scale the what I call core business, and then internally I can still handle any engineer to order low volume jobs. Because as you guys know, when you start talking to sheet metal manufacturers, right, they want to do repeat volume, which I fully empathize. And the value in my having and retaining an integrated supply chain here vertically is so that I could do small batch engineer to order, again, with Ryerson steel.
So, Alfredo, if I needed a cart to quickly haul a Christmas tree out of my condo, what type of lead time would we be looking at for something like that?
So well, your friend could get our standard 4-week lead time, but being the OEM of choice, again, we always work with partners, and you can probably get something in 2 weeks quite quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, get that right over there. Yeah.
James, anything from your side do you want to add to that equation?
Yeah, Waev and Alfredo specifically, they're really a case study in the marriage of two strategies. As a sales manager or a nationwide distributor, you're always looking for the customer with the right fit, and also the finger on the pulse of manufacturing, which is really where we see ourselves in RAP. We understand what man hours and supply chains are really available, all the way up to full welded assemblies. And to be able to tie together scale and scope, across multiple states and boundaries, to really partner, with Waev, because it was an interesting conversation in which a lot of our customers come into the conversation and they know exactly what they want. And what I really liked about this was Alfredo was very open to say, Ryerson's an historic vendor. We've partnered for years. What can you guys do? Insert yourselves at any point within this manufacturing process that helps me scale. And that's what he really discussed, for the first 6 months was exactly at what level of manufacturing can we provide that allows you to sell more units, to take care of your customers, to lower your lead times. And we really did the work on the front end. So once we put that sort of pattern recognition out, within all of our branches, family of companies and supply chains, it just really worked. And I would say, it is a lot of work. Okay. And, it's dedication from both sides. Both companies have to be on the same page, and you have to really blur the lines in between, customer and distributor. This is really two American companies saying, you know what, we're going to tackle and really win the manufacturing game in 2023, 24, and now we're into 25. And, I can't overstate that partnership really led us here. And again, Alfredo, thank you for being on this Cup of Joe. I think that your message is clear, and we're just happy to be part of helping your brand succeed.
Well, that's well said, James. Thank you. And I think that's really kind of the bread and butter for Ryerson Advanced Manufacturing. But a lot of compliments being thrown back and forth here, but let's be honest, sometimes it doesn't always go as smooth as you'd like, right? And James, you might want to cover your ears for this one, but Alfredo Was there an instance ever that, maybe we fell short or, and then we made it right for you? I think because I think that's important, right? Because every relationship's going to have their hiccups, and it's about like, how do you respond? Do you have an example of that?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to as long as you set the expectation, no individual party, right, ever gets truly offended or walks away, right? But out of like I alluded before, right, we had hiccups, and so we knew that inherent to any new process or development in a supply chain, there's a risk that's involved. And so at times, the example that comes to mind is we were evolving the supply chain so that Ryerson could supply Taylor Dunn, this brand, with a painted frame. And so we knew that that leap is not necessarily 100% in the comfort zone of supplying painted steel body chassis. I mean, these vehicles are quite large. And so that there's a sensitivity in transport and delivery. We, again, highly, highly value our brand equity. And we received our first initial batches that weren't to paint spec, right? So we have a qualified ASQ scratch test that needs to be adhered to, right? And there were just some gaps, right, in the paint shipping, and I know that that's not acceptable for my end customer, and so my manufacturing line again caught that. I think the way that this was handled was just to me a great example of we had hedged for this, so we kept raw frames in inventory, right? Knowing that there could be variability, knowing that I wasn't going to bet the farm on these painted frames, and I didn't let the inventories get too low, and having that tight communication, because the Ryerson advanced processing team and my team, I mean, they talk every week, right? So staying very close to the pulse as the supply chain especially evolved, that high level of frequency of communication made it very successful for us. So even though we did have this hiccup, it was very helpful to recover, right? Because we have the time to relay the feedback, right? The team quickly picked up the frames, sent it back to their internal team to understand what broke down in the supply chain, which is a huge help for us, right? So you take something that traditionally I would have to really deal with as a customer, and that's part of the premium. And I didn't have to affect any of my customers whatsoever, right? And I was happy in that partnership, again, to take the extra working capital, right, to hedge for this, knowing that these are going to be changes, right? It's like I said before, it's just about expectation setting, right? If you're brand new to doing this and you're going to bet the farm on something like this, you really open yourself up to sour a relationship that really doesn't need to be soured if you're just very, very methodical and strategic about how you go about implementing change.
Yeah. Sounds like a heavy emphasis on alignment, transparency, and communication. It sounds like to evolve the business through the cycle.
Absolutely. The more transparent that you can be, I think the better. So you're constantly on the same page. I think one of the things that I constantly commended James and his team specifically, just being able to pick up the phone, right? I had 4 different people that I could call or that my team could call to understand, hey, when is this shipment coming? Because, we were experiencing, a delay here or there, right? And equally, I'm empathetic because as much as I would like to deliver every single vehicle 100% on time to every customer, there are other supply chain challenges that we must face and prioritize. And so I don't always deliver 100% on time. So relaying that empathy and just keeping that communication is very, very healthy. We do it with our end customers, and it's the same expectation that I relay to our partners.
And James, I assume you reciprocate that, but I'd be curious where you'd land with regards to, changes we had to make. How do we communicate through those changes that maybe have to change on our end to fit that differentiated supply chain?
And I think in manufacturing, there is always the conversation of the print versus actual manufacturing versus expectation versus, in Waev and Taylor Dunn's case, I mean, they've been doing these parts, for decades, right? They're experts in this field. So when we came into it, again, I can't overemphasize the open book approach. My staff was there the next day. In terms of this paint issue, we were on the floor, we were in the assembly line, because it's very important to understand what value you need to provide or can provide beyond the metal, okay? And when you talk about an actual assembly line and just-in-time delivery, you have to get deeper than the print, you have to get deeper than a paint inspection, you really have to understand their process. And then in our case, going backwards to understand, how did we package it? How did we ship it? I want to review the paint inspection, the chip inspections, and solved itself, fairly quickly. But without that open dialogue, if Ryerson or the customer get into a match of, well, this print and that print and my print, if it becomes our print and it's a discussion on how we're trying to make sure that Alfredo has his build rate, just like you said, it always ends with the right result. Okay. You just have to put your dedication and your time into it. And he's been a great customer. He was very clear on what level he wanted us to be involved at. So we did the same thing. Our team was dedicated and we went in there and put the work in there to fix that. And there's been other issues, and there always will, just to make sure that he's getting the parts that he needs on time. Simple as that.
Yeah, Nick, I'd like to supplement James' answer by saying, at times we fell down, right, as the OEM and as the customer. And I think this is, again, something that needs to be shared more in industry, right? There's usually like blame the supplier kind of culture, which I really disdain. And so, as James alludes to, right, these steel body chassis, they've been welded here at Taylor Dunn again for decades and decades, right? They have expertise of welders that we've had, fortunately employed for years and years and years. And so they develop their own nuance and technique as to how to weld. They've been privy to all of the feedback that we've received in the field and modifications on the welding itself that may not have made its way onto the print, right? So there are times where, we sent a golden sample to Ryerson and it didn't match our own prints, right? Oh. And when we started doing the investigation, it's like, yeah, I would talk to my welding team and they said, yeah, well, we knew that we had experienced, previously in the field. So through tribal knowledge, right, we always just fill this gusset, right? Or we always just do this fill or this bead a particular kind of way. Or they had inconsistencies into the length of the actual bead. And so getting to this level, I was always very transparent with James, especially up front, to say, listen, this is what you're going to get as a package, right? A golden standard and some prints, and we're going to have to collaborate as to at what level of maturity do we wish those prints to be. And similarly, I have to give James and the advanced processing team so much credit, because they could have said, I can't take this. This is a no bid, no quote, because the print's not right, or you're going to hold me to some unreasonable expectation, and then we're going to have to go through the chargeback cycle, and that is not an expectation that we set. So similarly with the paint issue, I had to convey the same level of empathy, right? When I submitted the initial, call it level of print, right, for the frame that I was looking for.
Very interesting. And I think James really appreciates being bailed out on that a little bit. So
like I said, yeah, your win is my win, which is a win-win for both of us.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And I can't overemphasize, in the year that's ahead of us, there's been a resurgence in manufacturing in the US. And it's an odd place in your career when you look around and you go, it's really up to us on the phone right here, right now on this call, to ensure that we have enough capacity in the U.S. to keep up demand, that we help the U.S. Infrastructure grow. It's on us, and this particular relationship really shown that to me. There was instances where Alfredo would call and said, we've got a new order here and here and here, and they were all over the place. Can we move production up? Can we do this? Can we do that? And if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. Okay. So I think that's the best part of this job, and dealing with customers like Waev is you really get to be part of U.S. manufacturing and where it's going. And it's been very, very fun to work on.
I'm glad you brought that up, because for our listeners that might be in a similar position, right? I mean, like you said, there's been a lot of uncertainty in manufacturing in the years leading up. There could be more uncertainty going forward. And just having the transparency and the partnership like this sounds like make it a lot easier. I guess what advice would you give to others that are kind of in your position, Alfredo and James, don't you chime in on this as well? Just about how this can really alleviate some of those uncertainties, if you will, in the marketplace, things that you can't account for.
Absolutely. I think there's, regulatory protections that are in place, like Buy American, right? USMCA, that are very closed ecosystem in the North American markets, especially in the United States. Taylor Dunn has long prided itself on being an American manufacturer, right? And we take an enormous amount of pride in knowing that the vehicles that are out, roaming green earth, right, are made with Ryerson steel, right? That's USA milled, right? And similarly, that everything else in the labor component that goes into it is also sourced in the United States. I think there's a premium for this, and I'll elaborate just on some of the markets that we play into. We sell a lot to the federal government, right? So if you think about these enclosed campuses, right? So something from a military Air Force base to the Marines in San Diego that we actually sell to quite happily, right? They purchase our products, and they also understand and enjoy, right, visiting our factory and getting that feel for, like, your vehicle that you're going to get delivered in 2 to 3 weeks is being assembled down the same assembly line that you're seeing now. And these steel body chassis, they contain all American steel, right? And I think that's a lot to walk away with certain governments, especially the federal government.
Yeah, certainly seems like a decent way or a strong way to be positioned as we roll into the new administration and the themes we're hearing from there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my response to that question is, other customers that are listening, or even if you're not a customer today and you're manufacturing a product, don't be afraid, or don't think it's outside the box to look at your supply chain and ask yourself, is it the best supply chain? What other things could I do? What other companies could I engage with that you could bring in and just look at the product, walk the floor. Let's look at some prints. What are some ideas? Design for manufacturability, lower cost, get more product out the door. I think everyone, we try to at Ryerson a lot, and I think this call is a good indication of that. Look ourselves in the mirror and say, what can we do better? What does the customer really need? What's the ask? And then how are we going to go out into our supply chains and accomplish it? And I think if everybody does that, I think that, we can keep up with hopefully an improving economy, and everybody make money, because that's, we all have jobs, and, grow the American, manufacturing sector. I look forward to it.
It's really refreshing to hear from the customer's perspective, right? And things that we talk about every day and really proven out. Alfredo, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. And I think a lot of people can benefit from it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both, and we will talk with you soon.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.